If not, I'm going to lose the content. Okay, alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Okay, alhamdulillah. Anybody have any questions for the Sheikh?
So what would be good examples of personal questions to ask? Because a lot of people in general don't ask. It's like certain questions just feel off limits without a guideline to know where to go.
So what would be too personal? An example of something too personal.
Bismillah. Too personal, I think you should leave that up to the person you're asking. If it's too personal, then more than likely they're going to tell you, that's too personal. I don't think I want to answer that, but they'll deflect from the question. They might spin you, right? Let whoever you're asking the question, let them decide if it's too personal. You never know. Of course, some things we all know might be a little bit too deep, but as far as what's too personal, I will leave it up to the person you're asking. And let them decide if that's too personal or not.
Any other questions? No, follow us.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question about on one of your lives. Somebody had commented, they were saying why do men go overseas, marry women, and she was trying to basically blame them, and you were saying it's deeper than that. Let's go to where did the breakdown occur at? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay. I don't think we have a lot of time for that. That's opening up, as the Prophet ﷺ said, you've asked, a major question. So he said, I had mentioned, a sister mentioned that brothers are going overseas to marry sisters overseas. And that's a minority. That's not a whole bunch of brothers that are doing that. I personally don't know. I know a handful of brothers who have married sisters outside of the African American Muslim community. And more particular overseas. So it's not a majority, but the few brothers who do decide to marry sisters outside of their race, some sisters, took issue with that. Why are brothers doing that? And I said that the issue is deeper than them just wanting, women who are different. Even though if that's their preference, you are entitled to your preference. But then I started to talk about how within the African American community, and even more specific within the African American Muslim community, how women are perceived. Doesn't necessarily mean that all of them are like that, but this is the way that they are perceived. African American women in general are perceived as being aggressive, overly assertive, disrespectful, lacking in, empathy and some of the things that I mentioned last night from the qualities of femininity, of a woman who has high feminine energy. And there is a lot of truth to that. And I think a lot of men, choose to marry women from other cultures or overseas to get the femininity that they're missing with the black women. And that's the point, that's the deeper point that I was trying to get to. And, women will fight me for that. But when you look at, and it happens on both ends, because when black women marry men from other cultures, they act differently. Just the same way black men, when they marry women from other cultures, they act differently. And it stems from our hatred for one another. Right? Black people, we literally hate one another. That's a fact. That is not something that we can just pass over. You walk past an African American man, you don't say nothing to him. This stuff is embedded in us. We grew up as teenagers. If you looked at me long enough, what you looking at? Why are you looking at him? And that was enough to start a fight, just because somebody looked at you. But we would never do that with a white person. White people get a pass. They can walk past you, look at you. You won't say anything to them. White guy come in, you know, he got on, you know, some Nikes or whatever the case. You don't even look him up and down. Black person come in, first thing you do, look at his shoes. Look at what he got on. And then we make a general assessment of you, whether or not you're a threat or not a threat. If we perceive you as not being a threat, then we don't pay no attention to you. But if we perceive you as a threat, then the gorilla in us want to challenge you. And we only do this to us. We don't do this to anybody else. Nobody else. White people in South Philly, they can walk up and down the street, 1 o'clock in the morning, walking their dogs. They are the safest people in South Philly. Nobody gonna lay a hand on them. Black person, we wouldn't step foot out of our house in South Philly, 1 a.m., going to walk a dog or going down the street to the bodega. Man, please. I ain't going out there that time of night. So you have to ask yourself, why is it that people from other cultures get it? Because we hate ourselves. That's the self-hate. And I mean, there's a whole conversation that surrounds that. But at the crux of what at the root of what you're asking, that's pretty much it. Yes,
I wanted to ask, a lot of times as Muslims, we hear about the dangers of social media. And most of it is true. However, most people never talk about the benefits of social media, such as brothers you might meet, connecting people, because I know years ago when I first got on, I'm not social, but I can talk. So I was able to connect with some brothers from other cities, even other countries. At that time, it kind of changed since then. But it's like nobody never touched on the benefits of social media, such as sitting in these classes, seeing different students from abroad that we normally wouldn't know. So how do we bridge that gap of teaching people, showing people how they can use this tool, this useful tool, to use it to their benefit, like a gun. The gun can use to do evil, and it also can protect it.
Gotcha.
So the questioner is asking that we often speak about the ills, the bad qualities of social media, but we don't always speak about the better qualities of social media. Brother gives some examples, connecting with people that you wouldn't otherwise know. You only met them through social media, benefiting from seminars such as one that we're in now, thus and so. So, to your question, first we want to say thank you. Thank you for your question. It's quite insightful and brings balance to our discussion this evening. Appreciate that. And secondly, I believe it's a matter of understanding something about our faith practice that I think we all kind of know innately, at least I hope we do, and that is that social media is something that's worldly, right? In and of itself is not an act of worship, right? So the origin with things that are worldly is permissibility, right? It's permissible. So it's neutral, right? It's not bad or good in and of itself. So what makes it bad or what makes it good is whatever we use it toward. And this means that if we use it toward good, now it's something that's good. If we use it toward bad, now it's something that's bad. And that's not something that's going to be the same for every individual because we're all utilizing it differently. So we have to measure ourselves with that, right? Measure ourselves with that and utilize it for a tool that is good. So as Muslims, right, as Muslims, when it comes to technology, we should be peoples that are looking to utilize that technology in a way that is beneficial to us and beneficial to others, right? And I state this because historically, Muslims have been behind the curve technologically, not in front of the curve. And by the time we catch up to the curve, we're behind, right? And I state this historically. If we look at the history of Islam, if we look at, we're not going to speak to the details of it, it'll put us on a tangent, but we'll mention this so that you can look into this for yourselves. Look at the history of the printing press relative to Islam and the Muslims.
look at the history of coffee relative to Islamic Muslims. Just find out how that kind of went. You'll be impressed, right? But in our lifetimes, right now, we're on social media right now, right? We're on Facebook and Instagram and all that, right? We only got to think back that far. Think back 15 years ago when it was just Facebook and people were asking questions, is Facebook permissible? What's the majority answer that you got? Huh? People were saying that Facebook is? Hold on, you heard people of knowledge, scholars saying that, right? Go back about 25 years. You go back about 25 years, we'll talk about the television, right? And is it permissible to watch TV or not? The majority answer you received was that television is? All right, cool. Now, whoever you heard that from at that time that was saying that this technological thing was haram, you find them on that same thing, don't you? Right? Facebook page, right? Website, this and that, right? On TV, right? All right. So I'm just saying, just be aware that in our history, we have a heritage of being behind the curve, and often academically and scholastically, our first knee-jerk reaction is to say that it is haram, and then later on we figure out ways to use it in a way that is permissible. Like the discussion that we're going through of cryptocurrency right now, Islamically, for those that are following that. You follow? If that makes sense. Go ahead.
Hold on. Give the sisters. Are there any sisters in the back that have any questions? We'll do one from the brothers and one from the sisters, so we give them an opportunity. If not, there are tons of brothers who have questions. Is there any sisters in the back who have any questions? Doesn't necessarily have to be related to the topic. It could be anything. Just use the microphone back there, inshallah. No?
You mentioned earlier, I was kind of confused. You said you were talking about said for a brother placing pictures with a sister, what can be seen of the sister, like, and you may mention that the sheikh said, well, you live in a society where such and such, you know, we see out of a woman. How do we like, you may mention their society being in America, it's basically you see women basically half naked all day. So how do you like adjust that mindset? Like, what can I see from a woman in the U.S. if I'm placing attention on it? Like, what can I, in this society, what can I see?
So the questioner is asking, he mentions that during my particular talk, we made mention of what can be seen of a woman. We told a bit of a story about what we learned from the sheikh at that time and all of that. In this country, what is it that can be seen of a woman that you are courting for marriage? Okay. I would have to raise that question with a question, and I would have to ask, I'm doing this on purpose, what is American Muslim culture with regard to courtship, and what is the standard that American Muslims have put into place with seeing a woman that they're courting for marriage, right? We largely have not come up with an answer for that question. That question is premised upon our culture. We haven't decided on what our culture is for that yet, but we need to. Right? We need to accept that we have culture, and then we need to control the narrative on what our culture is and create our culture for us. What I would submit, and my submission is not representative of all of American culture, but based on knowing us and our people, if we get to that point in courtship, and the family of the sister, the guardian, the sister, everyone is comfortable, my submission would be at maximum, what she would normally wear in her home on a regular day. That would be my submission. Nothing beyond that, nothing that's just whatever she normally would wear. Not too revealing or this and that, right? But that's my submission. We don't have a standard yet, at least from what I have observed. Right? in the long run.
I got a question about it, and I think about the job, right? The Saajid at the time, I think he mentioned it a couple of yesterday, where the man would have to come and tie his family up because he heard about the job. And the reason, I don't know the reason, it's just the reason, because I'm saying that because we're in the internet phase right now with all the social media and all the glitz and glamour and everybody want to be whoever they want to be on there. Is the reason why he's tying up his family because they want to go out and seek the pleasures of the world?
Hold on, the brother asked a question.
Because I don't see why would he be wanting to tie him up if it's chaos outside. It will be pleasure outside. They won't run to the pleasure, but they run into the fire. Is that when he's coming with the good and the bad? They said it comes to the test and jump in the fire because the fire is the water.
Gotcha.
The water is.
I got you. So he's asking about the hadith of the Dajjal, the emergence of the Dajjal, where the Prophet ﷺ said that the women would be the followers of the Dajjal. And then the Prophet ﷺ went on to say that a man would go home, go into his house, and tie his women folk, his wife, his sister, his mother, his daughter, tie them up in the home to protect them from going out to join the Dajjal. And he's saying, well, if the Dajjal is going to be chaos outside, then why wouldn't the man, why would it be anything wrong with him tying them up, if there's chaos outside? Or is he tying them up because he doesn't want them to go out and join in what's, going on out there? The scholars, they say that, number one, the reason why the women are following the Dajjal is because the women, ashadda ta'athur, that women are impressionable. Women are impressionable. That's a fact. And when we walk into a store, we literally go in the store for what we go into the store for. Tunnel vision. That's men. If we even go into the store at all. Women go into the store, you get lost. Oh, 50% off over here. Look, this is 50%. It's like, but we didn't come here for that. Man, let's stick to what we came in here for. But this is 30% off. There's not, you know how long I've been waiting for this to go on sale? It's finally on. So it's like, come on, man. Like, yeah. So women are ashaddu ta'athur. They are seriously impressionable by the things that they see, they hear. Women are creatures of hearing. What they hear, it affects them. All right? And so the Dajjal, how does he become the Dajjal? When he emerges, he doesn't emerge and say, I'm God. There's a process to that. He starts off as a righteous man. Then he goes from that to being a hakim. He goes to being in a position of leadership authority. And then he goes from that to claiming to be a prophet. Then he goes to claiming to be God. So if you look at his progression, there is a step-by-step process. Now, when you look at the Prophet ﷺ, doesn't go into the details, but we can fill in the blanks as to how that progression happens, based upon how people go from being nobody to somebody overnight. We can see how that happens in our society. So a lot of times that happens through lies, promises, false promises. This is how politicians wiggle their way up to the top, and then you started off as the council person, and now, you're the mayor, you're the governor, and then you run it for president. That's how it works. And it starts off with false promises, making promises to people. I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you, whatever the case may be. And women are affected by that. Women are affected by promises from basic men. A man tell you, we're going to get married, you'll follow him all the way to hell. And you're not even married to him. You'll follow him all the way to the hellfire. He's stringing you along because he's promising you, we're going to get married. Let me just work everything out with my first wife. How many sisters heard that? Yeah. And you follow him. You continue to follow him because you are affected by the promises that are being made. So when the Prophet ﷺ said that the man will go into the home and tie his women folk up, it is to protect them from going out and being followers of the Dajjal, buying into his rhetoric, buying into his lies. The word Dajjal actually means liar. That's what the word Dajjal means, is a liar. Kadhab, the biggest liar. Anybody who claims to be God is a liar. But this is what it means. So he's promising, he's a liar, but he's promising things. And so he's tying his women folk up to protect them from buying into the lies. Yeah, because they are impressionable. And so the point that I was making yesterday about women, when they step outside of this lane of their femininity, you're buying into the lie of society, of you being free and you don't have to listen to no man and don't be obedient to no man. And, as one woman said, well, how am I supposed to be feminine when the men are not receptive to our femininity? It's just like, well, so you're only going to be feminine if you find a man that can be feminine, so what do? Do you put your femininity on pause and become masculine until you can find a man who's willing to be receptive to your femininity? But then the longer you stay in masculine mode, the harder it is for you to come out of masculine mode and be feminine. Factor that in. Factor that in. If you say that, you're preaching all of this being feminine, but it's hard to be feminine in a world where men don't respect or not receptive or don't value your femininity. Okay, so what do? Be masculine until you can find the right man that is willing. So how many women are operating in this masculine space and with this masculine energy, and then when a masculine man does come into your life, you can't let your guard down. You're still in survival mode. Meanwhile, you got a whole husband at home that's willing to provide and willing to take care of you, willing to assume the role of being, a role model for your children, but you still can't let your guard down. You're still in survival mode. The longer you stay in masculine mode, the harder it is for you to tap into your feminine energy. That's a fact. Hello, Tyler. Hello, sister who was asking a question?
Yes, assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam.
The question is, if you're a female entering, like you married a brother, and he already has his home established with children and stuff like that, and you're coming in as a stepson, and you may not have children, or your children are older at home. How do you, or what would you guys suggest to implement some type of structure if you can kind of sense that there is none?
So she's asking if a man, so let me make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. You're asking if a man marries a woman who has children, and
No, I'm sorry.
he has children.
He has children.
And she's marrying him, he has children. And he hasn't done, like an exceptional job with putting structure in place with the children. And as a woman coming into this situation, you see that it's just chaos. There's no structure. They're able to stay up as late as they want. They're able to watch as much TV as they want. They're able to be on their phones for as long as they want. They're able to, come home and just go outside, no homework, just no structure. What is the best way for a woman to begin to suggest, things that will start putting structure in place?
In addition to her femininity.
While all maintaining her femininity. Almost.
Number one, if she knew that before she married him, if the sister already knew that was the situation before she married him, that means she made a conscious decision to deal with a chaotic situation like that. That's what she wanted to do. If she didn't know it was chaotic, then the next situation, that's a problem. If you couldn't see that it was chaotic, I would argue that your sit-down procedures were not very good. If you couldn't see that, if you couldn't pick up on that. But anyway, if that happened, and now she marries him, she said, you mentioned it a couple yesterday. Sisters really don't get this, and we've been saying this for a while. Sisters don't understand that men will do anything if you are doing the right thing. If you know what to do, he's going to do whatever you want him to do. The problem is, a lot of times the sisters don't know what to do, Therefore, they don't get the right response that they're looking for. So you're saying how to remain feminine. If you are feminine, he's going to do whatever you're going to really be in control. The woman's going to be in control if she's, as we say, if you're playing your part right. If you're not playing your part right, you're not going to get the results you're looking for. That's general across the board. It's not just specific for the situation you're talking about with kids and this chaos. You're supposed to be feminine anyway. And he's going to buy into that because that's what men do. Am I lying, brothers?
Back to the drawing board.
The brothers, everybody, all the men know, sister. I don't know if y'all can't see him. But what are you saying?
I'm saying, like, the home is already established. And
The home is already established.
Yes, like, there was no woman in this, just the same woman. And people get defensive when you check their parents. This is something people don't know.
You check your parents?
But no. But even what you just mentioned, people get defensive when you check their parenting. Even the language, listen to the language that you're using. That is exactly the point that we're making. Just using that language, you get defensive when, why does it have to be that you're checking him? Why can't it be that you're making a suggestion to help improve the situation? You see the difference? I said the same exact thing that you said. I just phrased it in a way that did not make you appear combative and adversarial. When you come off and you say, well, I'm checking you about, well, you can't stand being checked about the way that you're parenting. Just accept the fact that I'm checking you about how you're parenting. You're coming off confrontational, you're coming off adversarial, and it puts the man on guard. He has to put his guard up because now he feels like I'm having a confrontation with you. Rather than you saying, honey, can I make a suggestion? Can I make a suggestion? You don't have to take it or not. I just want to make a suggestion. You're my husband. I love you. I want what's good for you. I want what's best for us. And I don't want to infringe on your space. You're a great parent. But can I make a suggestion on how we could improve the situation? There's no man sitting in this room that would object to saying, sure, I'm all ears. Because you didn't come off confrontational. My guard is not up. You're not approaching adversarial. You're not approaching, I'm checking you about your parenting. No, I'm just making a light suggestion. You can take it or not. That's how men function. Sisters, when we say this is how men function, we're telling you as men, this is how men function. I want you guys to understand something. Many of the women in our communities did not grow up with their fathers. That's a fact. Many of the women in our communities, even if your father was in your life, you did not have a healthy relationship with your father. And so when you come into the Muslim community, and imams and students of knowledge are giving you wisdom and knowledge about how men function, it would behoove you to be all ears because you didn't get this from your father. You didn't get this from a man in your family. Right now, I have daughters. My oldest daughter is 7. She's watching her dad. She's looking at her dad, how I move, the things I do. Honey, be quiet for a second. I'm about to get on the phone. We're in the car. She knows dad is on the phone, an important conversation. I don't want to interrupt my father. If I'm having a conversation, she walks up. She knows that I'm talking. She waits patiently, or she says, excuse me, and waits for me to turn my attention towards her. She knows. I'm teaching her how to interact with men. As she gets older, my relationship with her becomes more intimate in terms of a father-daughter relationship. So I start to have conversations with her about how men function. So she knows. So when my daughter or your daughter that you've dropped jewels on her, when they come to a lecture like this, the first thing they're going to say is, yep, my father used to say that all the time. They're not going to be oppositional. Like some women, the moment we say men like this, men don't like that, oh, well, that's not what this brother did. That's not. It's like, how would you know? A man is telling you what men like. it would behoove you to be all ears and listen, because you didn't get that from a man. And here now a man is telling you. As we're talking, sisters, your partition is up, you can't see. Brothers are nodding their heads as we come across certain points when we're talking about what men are receptive to. Men are not receptive to combative, adversarial behavior. And unfortunately, with many of the women in our communities, that's all you know. You don't know. And I mean, it's not your fault. We're not blaming our women. We're not blaming the sisters. What we're trying to do is pinpoint an issue, a challenge, and to unlearn the behavior so that we can relearn how to engage, with the opposite sex in a healthy way. No.
When you mentioned if a man is comfortable, you guys have a conversation, it's a sign that he didn't have a positive relationship with his own fault.
Say it again.
If a man is comfortable with confrontation with a woman in the way that you described, it's a sign that he himself didn't have a positive relationship with his own fault.
He said that if a man is comfortable with confrontation, then that is probably a sign that he did not have a good relationship with his father, or didn't see a healthy relationship between his father and his mother, because dysfunction became normal for him. So he welcomes the dysfunction. He welcomes the combative attitude. Hurt people hurt people.
So not related to like marriage or nothing. So when I first started a business and then started growing, people would warn me like, watch out for the evil eye, watch what you post. But if you're an entrepreneur in like low 30 or younger age bracket, how do you market your business on social media without trying to attract the evil eye? Or is it just is what it is at that point?
Great question.
So the question is speaking to his being an entrepreneur. And when he first entered into entrepreneurship, there were those that were warning him and saying, beware of the evil eye and beware of what you post on social media and things of this nature. So how do you navigate this? You're running a business, you have to market, you have to make sales. How do you do this? I'm gonna say one thing, very practical, and I will allow our brothers to dovetail if they so choose. Be consistent on your du'as for the morning and evening. Right?
Yeah.
We're all familiar. We all know the du'a book, History of the Muslim, Portraits of the Muslim. There's a section in there, du'as for the morning and the evening. The window of time for this is after you have prayed Fajr until the sun rises for the morning. And in the evening, the window of time for this is after you have prayed Asr until Maghrib. Right? That's the ideal window of time. However, if that time elapses and the sun is risen, you can still do it all the way up until after Dhuhr. If the time has elapsed and it's after Maghrib, you can still say it all the way up until after Isha.
Right.
Be consistent with that. Inshallah ta'ala, that will assist.
There's a statement that a lot of Muslims say, been saying for years. I'm sure y'all probably heard it. Y'all ever hear the statement when people say, anything that starts haram ends haram? So my question is there any dalil that you guys know of to support that statement from the Quran or Sunnah, or any dalil that to refute that statement from the Quran or Sunnah? Because I've had this discussion with a lot of different people, and I always forget to ask, because it's like we can't never, it's like people be on social media, and it could be business dealings, brothers dealing with women, all different types of things, but the statement always floats back around, you can't buy a garment from somebody, a sister off the internet, because the start haram is going to end haram. With a money transaction or a marriage transaction or whatever. So the statement itself, I've always wondered, like, is there dalil that proves that statement, or dalil that goes against that statement?
As you're asking the question, I'm just kind of going through a Rolodex in my head to see if there's anything from the Quran or the Sunnah that either aligns with that or refutes that. He's asking about the phrase that you usually hear Muslims saying, and I've said it before myself, what starts off haram, I insert usually ends up haram. Meaning, if you start off doing something that is haram, if you do not change that narrative at the end of that is still going to be haram. Now, if you make tawbah, whatever, for example, let's say a person was earning money in a haram way, selling drugs, Muslims selling drugs. Someone comes to him and says, hey, that's haram, you can't do that. It's haram, the way you're earning your money is haram. And he says, okay, I'm going to make tawbah, I'm going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. He makes sincere tawbah. He takes all the drugs he has and he gives them away, flushes them, he's done with that life. The money that he acquired from that is halal. It's his. He earned it, even though it was haram, but he made tawbah for that. And he decided never to go back to that. All right? So that started off haram, but he changed the narrative through tawbah. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ata'ibu min ad-dam kaman la dhanba lahu." The person who repents from a sin is like a person who never committed the sin to begin with. But a man who's courting a woman in a way that is haram, and then he lies to his wife, and then he turns around and he marries her with, a makeshift wali. Right? You know what a makeshift wali? Somebody you just randomly choose to marry you to the system. And then you say, well, we're married. That started off haram and it ended haram. Right? So he didn't change the narrative. And the only thing that I can think of, and Shuyuk can kind of tap in with that, is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, "Inna Allah tayyib wa la yaqbalu illa tayyib." That Allah is good and He only accepts good. So if you start off with something that is haram and you don't change that narrative, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to accept that. It still falls under the category of what is haram. So I would insert what starts off haram usually ends haram, because if the person doesn't change the narrative, then it's still haram. Wallahu ta'ala.
I would just dovetail ever so briefly and mention.
He's so smooth, right?
So smooth. And mention that as Muslims and as spiritual people, we look at happenings in this life in terms of what it means in the hereafter. So we're looking at the hereafter in order to understand this life. So if we're looking at the generality, that's general, not specific. If we look at the generality, that what starts as haram, ends as haram, I would say, look to Yom al-Qiyamah itself as evidence that what starts one way, that's what one will receive back. Right? The day of resurrection proves that. Those who for good receive good, those who for bad receive bad. Generally. Can Allah forgive? Can He show mercy? Absolutely. Can there be an exception? Absolutely. But generally, yes. One. Two, we have a principle that we're all familiar with. Al-Jazaa min jinsil amal. Right? That your recompense is what you put forth. Right? You get out what you put in. Right? This is a principle we have in our faith. Lastly, we have a statement of Abu Darda. May Allah be pleased with him. He states, Al-birru la yubla. You're not punished for doing what's right. With ithmu la yunsa. Sin is not forgotten. With dayan, and the judge la yunsa. He doesn't forget. Kun kama shit. So be however you want. Kama tudeen tudan. As you practice your deed, you will be judged. Right? And that is in this life often before the hereafter.
So, I know that we arranged a question and answer session. It's 10 o'clock. I haven't eaten all day. I usually don't like they order food, but I don't like to eat before a lecture. I don't want to be burping. I don't want to be full. I want my stomach empty because I focus better when I'm hungry. And I know the shuyukh, I know they're hungry. I know they want to go home. They have their families. And I know you guys want to go home. You have your families. So we'll take one more question, inshallah. And it's hard to choose.
I'll make a suggestion. Mine's not a question. Mine's a suggestion.
Go for it.
One, I want to thank you all for coming here. Allah reward you for your efforts. This was phenomenal. To what Imam Aqil Ingram was talking about, that would release, and so far as I guess I would put in the concept of perception management, there's a book that if you get an opportunity to read, it's probably hard to find, called Subliminal Seduction by Wilson Brian Keys, and it speaks to what you talked about so far as how social media speaks to us subliminally and how we respond to it. And I just want to put that out.
What is it called again?
It's called Subliminal
Seduction.
Subliminal Seduction by Wilson Brian Keys. It's hard to find,
Sounds interesting.
but it's a really interesting book. He talks about how Madison Avenue uses sex and things like and women
Gotcha.
to basically seduce you to buying that product. That's all I'm gonna say. So,
My question quick.
Uh-huh.
So my question would be, you were talking, I want you to ask you real quick. So when you were speaking about the two zina, the high and the low, and the low, Allah says, when I talk about what is Allah speaking about both or just ages?
Speaking about both, he's asking about the ayah. He said when we talked about zina, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا zina, and don't come close to zina. Which category of zina is Allah referring to? He's referring to both, because the minor leads to the major. So if Allah says don't come close, what brings you close to zina? The minor form of zina. So by default of him saying don't come close to something, he's negating, he's making both of them impermissible, because one leads to the other.
That was a question for you.
For who?
For you.
Me?
You transition from, because a lot of us come from the street. When we accept Islam, our motivation is low. Like, how did you go from the street being, the street dude transition into Islam, just to get people to see how, like, from becoming an author, from having, you know what I mean?
Oh man.
Like speaking with proper diction and like just changing your
demeanor.
Just, it takes work. I mean, it's like anything else. Like, I came to the realization that this is my path. And so if this is your path, then perfect your craft. Perfect it. All aspects of it. The speaking, the writing, the thinking, everything, the networking with the people within that space, you perfect your craft. Once you decide that this is the path for you, then you begin to invest all of yourself in it. And knowledge is such that there is no, any student of knowledge can tell you, you can invest all of yourself in knowledge is only going to get you a little bit. The scholars, they say, in al-ilm, in tu'tiyahu kullak, rubbama yu'tika ba'da. That if you give knowledge all of yourself, perhaps it will give you some of itself. It requires every single aspect of you. So, I mean, just the more you invest in it, you're going to get what you put into it. So if you're, at the beginning, if you just see yourself as a student of knowledge and you just memorize some text or whatever the case may be and you regurgitate what you read out of books and you become content with that, then that's where you will be. When you say, all right, I have to go deeper than this, because there's so many people. So how do I separate myself from everybody else? How do I go you study Kobe Bryant? I'm not a basketball guy, but I love Kobe's. He was ambitious. He spent hours training. Some of his teammates would say, after the game, we would shower, go party. Kobe would go back to his hotel room. He would be thinking about reading plays and whatever. 6 a.m., 4 a.m., he's up at the gym while everybody, he separated himself from everybody else, man. And that's why he is who he is. He was who he was. That's the best way I can explain it. Wallahu a'lam. Jazakumullah khairan, you guys, for coming out. We do appreciate you, and hopefully, inshallah, we can do this again. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all. I hope that there was some benefit that came out of this, both for you guys online as well as you guys that were here. If there was anything that we said that was good, that was beneficial, it was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if there were any mistakes that was made, that it was from ourselves and from the trickery of shaitan, and we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And all of the talks, they were streaming it live here at the Imam Muslim Family Center, so they can catch it on YouTube. You can catch it on their YouTube page if you want to go back. And also, I recorded it as well on my Facebook page, which I'll upload to YouTube at some point, inshallah. So, tap in, inshallah. No. That's just, I just did this morning. I was back there working on this while Aqil was talking. Yes, if anybody wanted to purchase some books, if anybody wanted to buy some books, I do have books with me. I have all of the books with me, inshallah. So if you wanted to purchase any books, I'm parked around that. So for any of the sisters that wanted to purchase books, my wife is over there. You can let her know what books you want, inshallah, and I'll make sure you get those. Jazakallah khair. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. No, it just means that when a man is not married, he doesn't have, there's no responsibility other than which is a sign of immaturity. Well, taking care of the family members is a responsibility. That helps. It still doesn't compare to a wife, because a wife requires emotional responsibility.
He becomes a prophet, right? He's in Arabia.